everyone. Today we're diving into a story, a really heavy one. It's about the massacre in Barsalogho.
In Burkina Faso, right?
Yeah, Barsalogho, Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the name might be kind of hard to remember, but stick with us on this. It's really important and even more jarring than the headlines might lead you to believe at first.
Yeah.
We're talking like up to 600 people gone.
600 people in a single attack. It's just
double what was initially reported.
It's hard to even fathom, you know?
And that's why we're doing this deep dive. We really want to get beyond just like the surface level and understand why this happened, what it means for the region.
Yeah, and what it could even mean for us. You know, even though it feels worlds away, it's easy to gloss over a number that big, right? 600.
Yeah.
You know, kind of loses its meaning.
Right.
But this French security assessment that we're diving into, it really gives us a glimpse into the human cost, you know?
Yeah.
The individual stories.
Behind the numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really unsettling. It's hard to comprehend that level of brutality.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Yeah.
We're talking about Barsalogho.
Right.
It's a remote town in Burkina Faso.
And for a lot of people listening, that might not mean a whole lot.
Right.
But Burkina Faso is in the Sahel region of Africa. And this region is becoming more and more known for conflict and instability.
And to really understand how awful this attack was, you got to understand the Sahel region.
Right.
It's dealing with poverty, climate change.
Weak governance.
Yeah. It's like all these factors combined make it really vulnerable to exploitation.
By militant groups, yeah. And what we're seeing now with this massacre, it just shows how much worse the violence in the Sahel has gotten. It's terrifying.
It's been going on for years, but it's like, imagine this. You're in this really small town. You don't feel very safe. And then the military, who are supposed to be protecting you, tell you to dig trenches for safety.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, these militants show up on motorcycles.
Oh, wow.
Shooting into the crowd, people digging. Some people even played dead and were still shot. It's
just awful.
The details from these survivor testimonies are just awful.
And it's not just how big the attack was, but also just how random it seemed. The brutality, it was just ordinary people.
Yeah.
And a lot of the victims were women and children.
Yeah, this wasn't a battle. This was just a straight-up massacre.
Exactly. And that's where this whole information war thing comes into play, you know? Because the group that claimed they did it, JNIM, they're connected to Al-Qaeda, and they said they were going after a militia.
Not civilians.
Right, not civilians. But the eyewitnesses, the number of people dead, it doesn't line up.
It really doesn't add up at all.
Right. And that difference is really important, you know, because JNIM, they obviously don't want to admit that they killed a bunch of civilians.
Yeah.
But the people who are actually there, they tell a completely different story. And that's what we need to figure out. Like, why are these stories so different? What are they trying to hide?
Which brings us to this French security assessment that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
This is giving us a lot more information than you'd normally get, you know, just from like reading the news.
Yeah.
And one of the things that it really points out is that the French left the region.
They withdrew, yeah.
And that was supposed to make things better, right?
Right.
But instead, it seems like it created this void, and now other people are coming in to fill that void.
Yeah, and not exactly the best people to fill it. Like, we've got these Russian mercenaries who have stepped in, and that just makes everything even more complicated.
I mean, there were these coups in Burkina Faso and in some other Sahel countries too, right?
Right.
And those were also supposed to help. They said they'd make things more stable, you know, improve security. But it seems like it's actually just made everything worse.
Yeah, it backfired big time.
It's wild. It's like trying to fix a problem, but your solution just creates a whole bunch of new problems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in Burkina Faso, that instability, it has a face, you know?
Yeah.
Captain Traoré.
Right. Right. He took over in a coup, right?
Yep, promised to fix everything.
Yeah.
Bring back order. And now, well, let's just say he's not very popular these days.
Not very popular. That's putting it mildly, right? I mean, they're calling him IB Captain Zero.
Yeah, IB Captain Zero.
That's a rough nickname.
It is.
Yeah.
So ID, that's the elite military unit that he was in charge of before.
Okay.
But after the massacre, where he basically told civilians to dig their own graves,
Yeah.
people started calling him Captain Zero because it seemed like there was zero leadership. Like the military just failed to protect people.
Yeah, I mean, this French security assessment, it doesn't hold back.
No, it doesn't.
It's got these quotes from survivors saying the military literally ran away. Just left them there.
Left them defenseless.
It makes you wonder, was this just like a massive screw up?
Yeah.
Or is it just, like, impossible to control? Like, even with the best intentions, this could have happened. It's scary. And the report says the violence is spreading to other countries, too.
It is spreading, yeah.
They even talked about an attack on, like, a Togolese army camp?
Yeah, and that's what's really worrisome here, is that this isn't just a Burkina Faso problem.
Right.
The instability, all the militant groups, the weak governments, other countries getting involved, it could easily spread throughout the whole region.
Like a domino effect.
Exactly.
And if these Russian mercenaries really are leaving to go back to Ukraine, like some reports are saying?
Yeah, that's another layer.
Burkina Faso's already on the edge. If they lose whatever support those guys were providing, I mean...
It could completely collapse.
That's what this French assessment is saying, right?
Yeah, they're saying Burkina Faso's on the brink.
Okay.
And that's why this deep dive is so important. This isn't just about some far-off conflict.
Right.
It's about understanding that the consequences could affect everyone.
So where do we go from here? I mean, is there any hope for Burkina Faso at all? What can we even do at this point?
It really is the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, this French assessment, it doesn't really give us any easy answers.
You're right.
But it does show us just how important this is. Because we're not just talking about a humanitarian crisis here.
Right. Although it definitely is that, too.
Oh, absolutely. But when a place is this unstable, it's like a breeding ground, you know?
Yeah.
For extremism, for organized crime, it's how things get worse everywhere, not just in that one spot.
Yeah, it's like that ripple effect.
Exactly.
You throw a stone in a pond, and the ripples spread out way beyond where that stone landed. Makes you think about, like, what our role should even be. Should we be doing something, even if it might make things worse? Or is it better to just stay out of it, even if that means, you know, people might get hurt?
It's tough.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about this stuff without thinking about colonialism, you know, and the impact it's had on the region.
It's a really complicated history.
It is. And what this deep dive really shows us is that there's no easy fix here.
Right.
Anyone who says they have the answer, they're probably trying to sell you something.
Exactly. It's easy to, like, fall into that trap of thinking it's simple, you know? Good guys, bad guys.
Right.
But it's way more complicated than that.
Way more complicated.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this assessment is so helpful.
Yeah.
It doesn't try to oversimplify things, you know? It just gives you the information, even if it's ugly, and lets you figure out what you think it means.
Yeah, that image of Burkina Faso, like, teetering on the edge, it's powerful.
It is. And it makes you think it's not just Burkina Faso that's like that, right? There's a lot of places in a really fragile state right now.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
But that's what we do here on the Deep Dive. We take these massive, complicated issues, stuff that can feel really overwhelming, and we try to break it down, you know?
Yeah. Figure it out together.
Exactly.
And hopefully, if we can understand these things better, we can at least start asking the right questions, even if we don't have all the answers.
It's better than not asking any questions at all, right? Like that saying, the only thing worse than asking the wrong questions is not asking any questions at all. So to everyone listening, don't be afraid to ask those tough questions.
Yeah. Stay informed, stay engaged.
And don't give up hope, even when things seem really dark. That's how we make things better, one deep dive at a time.